Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother asarimhotep with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. Today is Sunday, May the 15th, 2022, and today's topic is sorry, Diop did not do the work, in particular on the meaning of Kemet and the importance of showing your work for future generations. So we know this is already going to be a controversial topic and subject, but here on the Mbongi, we're always ready for the smoke. So all that and more when we return in just a moment. Welcome. I want to apologize first and foremost. I found myself farther away from home than normal, and so I made a stop. I'm out here. Where am I? For people from the Philly area, I'm out here in King of Prussia. So I'm at an establishment, and so you might hear some background noise and kind of people conversing in the back. So hopefully I'm close enough to the mic that that is kind of drowned out throughout the course of this discussion. So please let me know in the chat if you can hear me well, or if there's too much background noise. And so I just want to welcome each and every one of you to the Mbongi and to today's important conversation. And this has been a long time coming, and we've had this discussion 1,000 times, but I guess every now and then you have to keep having the conversation, because there are those who don't like to read, and then there are those who don't listen, and then there are those who listen and don't comprehend. So you have to keep repeating these conversations over and over again. So hopefully we can put some more context to the conversation centered around, first and foremost, ancient Egyptian identity and the concept of race, and then on the subsequent arguments that have ensued over the 100+ years that this conversation has been going on. And so I just want to first and foremost thank each and every one of you for joining us live, and those who have made themselves known in the chat. And it's everything is everything. Diop Taharka says, "What are you saying?" Just hold tight and take notes, and you'll see exactly what I'm saying. But welcome, first and foremost, welcome to the program. I greatly enjoy your presence. And Althea Cross Lasha is in the building. Sister Venusia is in the building. Cousin Herd is in the building. Sister Tamika is in the building. And reminding each and every one of you to hit the like button and subscribe and share this link with your friends and family and enemies if you don't like them. We all going to get it in today. So thank you, Sister Tamika, for your presence, and Brother Any Harriet Calfani. He says, remember CPT. I only know that it's colored people's time, so you have to elaborate on what you mean by that. And note on this show, if I say 4 o'clock or whatever time, we start at that time. So I try to make it a habit to be punctual, for these types of discussions. So help me out, Brother Any Harriet. And Jehuti Ma'at is in the building. Teti Ursa Ma'at Ra. Seneferu is in the building. Ampianki is in the building. The Black African Power to you. Harold Richardson, Hotep to you. And Brother Chavez is in the building. And Sister Emmy Kett is in the building. And Richard Sheffield says, Habaragani family inviting others to get to the Ndongi. Indeed. He says, my cousin lives in King of Prussia. I don't know if it's Prussia or Prussia. I'm people tell me it's pronounced something different. So, of course, I'm not originally from here. So, he says, oh, I forgot to read the rest. If anything goes down, all right. So that's the stash spot. When the spies or whatnot, they are in some trouble. They go to the secret hideout. So that's gonna be your fams. So appreciate that. Amara Berry is in the building. Inspiring. Burrell is in, or Spin Burrell is in the building. Peace and blessings. Negus. Yeast is in there. Sorry about to go in on these folks. We got comprehension issues. Indeed, every now and then you just gotta, it is what it is. It's still love from our people. We just gotta elevate to a higher understanding. And so, peace to you, Marlon. Thank you for joining the conversation. So, the title of the conversation is, if I can just find the banner real quick. Sorry, Diop did not do the work. The importance of showing your work. And so, I'm going to have to state this probably throughout the conversation because, again, you're working with a lot of people who don't comprehend well, and they want to put words in your mouth. And so, when I'm having this discussion, this is not a tear down of the elder, the ancestor, Dr. Km.t. This is just to correct and to point out a shortcoming in an analysis of his in one or several of his works concerning this issue on the meaning of Kemet. And there's certain individuals. If you caught my show last night, I talked about, I gave about 10 points of why the discussion on the meaning of Kemet is very important. And one of those points that I talked about was, in doing this research, you come to find out what scholars are serious or not. And, and I introduced, this notion that you have enthusiasts, you have teachers, and then you have scholars and researchers. And within that category, there's a hierarchy, and I put scientists at the top. And when you're talking about scientists understand something in research, and that is that when you publish anything, you're publishing it with the understanding that the reader is going to read your work and critically analyze and to look for flaws, which is why we try to do self-correction before publishing. We send it out to our peers so they can review it. If it's depending on the nature of the book or the journal article, it may be reviewed by other peers and so that we can try to catch as much issues and try to word things a little bit clearer before it reaches the public. And that doesn't mean that you're going to have a perfect work. It just means that you will be brought aware of certain issues that may come up, once you publish the text. And so, scientists and real researchers understand this. And in science, we critically analyze the previous works, and it does not matter what the social status is of the individual. If you publish anything, you want the community to critically analyze your work. And so it's only in this social media community that when you criticize or critically analyze their work, there is a lot of crocodile tears and crying. And in my soon to be 43 years of living, I have never seen grown men cry more than in the so-called conscious community space. And it be over the most trivial things. And one of them is, well, their work was critiqued, and it's just a shame. And you have some who claim to have been the understudy of certain elders, but obviously they didn't teach them how to take criticism and how to submit to criticism. But that's another conversation for another day. And so what the objective of this conversation is to help those of you who may not be familiar. Y'all may have gone to college, and if you've gone to college, you know that when you submit papers, your teacher bleeds your paper, and you should be used to criticism. But there are some individuals who may not have gone to college, but who's interested in this work and may not be familiar with how certain subjects and the like are advanced into the future. And then there are some who went to college, but they may have gone into another field where writing and research is not central to what they do, if that makes sense. So they don't understand the process of knowledge development, knowledge production, and the overall goal. And so, the layperson who may not be familiar with how all of this happens, they don't understand that for a scientist, I only have one obligation, and that is to the truth. And it matters not if somebody was a sacred or well-revered elder, or if that person was a most hated enemy. We look at context and we look at the specific evidence, and we make judgments based on that, not who the person was. And so this is something that Km.t Diop understood and knew. And so what I'm going to do, and I won't be able to look at the chat throughout this unless I pull out my phone or something like that. But so keep this in mind, when we're having this discussion. So what I'm going to do is share my screen. Oh, and I forgot to say this before I go there. I'm going to be doing throughout this conversation is I'm going to pull up Km.t Diop's 1977 text. So and I've had these scans for quite a while of the important chapter, which is chapter 5, of his text. And what we're going to do is we're going to go line by line and analyze, and we're going to see why I say that Km.t Diop didn't do the work. And because he didn't do the work, this is why we, are having this conversation about individuals who want to use Diop and Diop's point of view without being able to come behind Diop and verify. So they don't have the skill set to be able to come back and verify Shekhan Diop's, argument. So, but before I go there, I want to, I'm going to have many kind of windows open. So y'all bear with me. So we're going to share the entire screen. So remember, I'm going to be going back and forth from the PDF that I created, and then some other PDFs maybe, and my PowerPoint. So I'm just going to make this full screen, and let me hide that real quick. So let's do this, and we are going to start our conversation. So again, sorry, and this is just for those who are in their feelings, because they don't know and haven't understood the assignment, regarding Sheikh Anta, and to show, because everybody who makes this claim, they never that Sheikh Anta was right, they can never point to the page where Diop did the actual work, and this is problematic for a number of reasons, which we're going to get into a little later on today. So going to the next one here. So the first thing that I want to mention here, and this is addressing certain individuals, and more specifically, at least on this point, is like Brother Smash, uh, and because Brother Smash, he's in general a good brother. However, he doesn't understand much of the argument, and he has a hard time hearing things and understanding what exactly has been said. He hasn't read any of the works, so he's so far behind on the conversation that you gotta point things out to him, and because he is very emotional, um, concerning the subject, that uh, he doesn't understand exactly what has actually been said. So, and as a result of that, he just makes up arguments and puts that in people's mouths. So there was no time in history where we or anyone in our camp has argued that we were the first ones or the only ones to make a comparison between ancient Egypt and the Black African languages. And so the the what he doesn't understand is that, of course, first, Diop was before any of us were ever born, and but what a lot of people don't realize is that Diop's Diop was influenced heavily by the work of Dr. Lilius Homburger. And for those who don't know, this was a woman who was born in the late 1800s, and lived, of course, in the early 20th century, and was also a teacher of Sheikh Anta Diop. She's the one who taught him linguistics and method. And she was a linguist and an African historian. And many may be familiar with a couple of her books. There's two books here. This is on the nominal prefixes, on the speech of the Fulani, the Hausa, and Bantus, and then there's the one on the far right, which is the Negro African languages, and that's what you see. There is an English translation, of that particular work. It's kind of hard to find. I have a copy, of course, and it's an excellent text. And so she is the one who led Sheikh Anta Diop on this path of looking into African languages in comparison to the ancient Egyptian. And so, but what's unique about her perspective is that she made the argument that the reason why there's so many correspondences between Egyptian and other African languages, continental African languages, is because all of those other continental African languages derive from the ancient Egyptian text. And so that was very controversial, of her time. And so Diop takes the essential essence of her arguments, and and some of the work that she has done, because she's been doing this stuff since like the 1920s, 1930s, and the like. And so uh, she's very well established, and so she was a teacher, of Shakti, and here's a postcard. She actually, used to correspond as well with Dr. W.E.B. Du Bois, and this is a postcard between Dr. Lilius Holmberger and W.E.B. Du Bois, and so this is just some trivia. You can find this on the net, and matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that matter of fact, I need to talk to Dr. Davies because she was doing some research on how some of the early African American scholars, and more specifically Du Bois, was in correspondence with Egyptologists, in those early days. And this is where they were getting a lot of some of their source material. But I don't recall her ever talking about Lilius Holmberger and Du Bois. And so I wonder to what degree. I'm pretty sure she knows about it. So I'll just contact her and see, to what degree, their relationship was. And so Lilius Holmberger, of course, was the one who taught Km.t, linguistics. So remember that Diop does not have a degree in linguistics. He has a degree in chemistry, physics, and and then his PhD was in cultural anthropology. And so, and then there's the late Leopold S. Senghor, who also studied linguistics in school, and Lilius Holmberger was his teacher as well. So we see these early influences, and in terms of the connections between the African languages and the ancient Egyptian. So this notion that like we don't know that there were Europeans who were making these connections is just silly, and it's one of those last ditch efforts because they can't deal with the information that they bring up stuff like this, like we don't know. Like as a linguist, I'm not familiar with the evolution of African languages, African language studies. Matter of fact, for those of you who want to know a little bit about the evolution of African language studies up to this, up to that point, because I think this book was published in the 40s, so like 40 something. I forgot when this was, the Negro African languages. Let me see. Yeah, 1941. So at the beginning of the book, Lilius Holmberger does a good summary of the evolution of the African language studies. That is worth checking out for those who wants to know more about that, at least from that time period. Of course, more detailed works have been published since then. So this is something that I have to cite every single time we have a damn conversation about Cheikh Anta Diop and about criticizing his work. And it's interesting that everybody is so gun-ho about Cheikh Anta Diop, but don't read Cheikh Anta Diop at all. And, this is what I'm citing here is from an interview that was held by a Harun Kofi Wangura that was placed in the Black World, Volume 23, number 4 in 1974. This answer was in a response to the question of what sort of preparation should young scholars make to undertake future studies in the field of, African studies, what I call Africology and the like. And so he says, I would like to see above all a greater number of researchers. In other words, we need more people doing research in African studies. Afro Americans, young Americans, and even whites. Why not? Because it's the young who are the least prejudiced. As a consequence, they are the most capable of making triumph ideas which frighten the older generation. Those old heads who are stuck in their ways and can't see the forest for the trees. Also, I think that it will be necessary to put together polyvalent scientific teams capable of doing in-depth studies, for sure, and that's what's important. I highlight this in red, and I'm going to have to echo this kind of loud. It bothers me when someone takes me on my word without developing a means of verifying what I say. We must form a scientific spirit capable of seeing even the weaknesses of our own proofs, of seeing the unfinished side of our work and committing ourselves to completing it. You understand? Therefore, we should then have a work which could honestly stand criticism, because that's what we've done. Uh, that's what we've done because what we have done would have been placed on a scientific plane. And so hopefully you all who are listening read this and understand exactly what he's saying. Diop is a actual scientist. And so as I mentioned before, scientists, we have no qualms with anybody, combing through our work, because our objective is to produce works that can stand criticism and gets to the actual core and the truth of things. And so with Diop being a scientist, he understands that. And so all of these silly folks who just take, snippets of Diop and don't study it and don't know about methodology and don't go to verify and providing the proofs of what he said, are not doing or not keeping in the not in the scientific spirit for which he, wanted us to be in. And uh and they're doing him a disservice and dishonoring his name. And so it's those individuals, people who want to use Diop as a name drop, but don't read Diop and don't know how to analyze Diop and don't know how to verify Diop. Those are the individuals who I have the most problems with, and who, I kind of lose respect for over time, because they continue to make arguments and want to argue all day when they could have actually been studying. And so this is so when I'm making my critique about Km.t Diop's work, keep in mind we have in print, this is exactly what he asked us to do. So, which is to be expected from anyone who is a scientist. So y'all can miss me with y'all crocodile social media conscious community tears, because someone has the audacity to do exactly what the elder said. So, we are not the same. We are not in the same camp. We're not in the same boat. And of course, check out Diop in his lab, doing scientific work as a scientist, and understands exactly what is required of a scientist and the like. So, what there's a text that a lot of people are not familiar with in the English speaking world, by Dr. Theophile Obenga, and it is written in French, and it is Africa in Antiquity, Pharaonic Egypt and Black Africa, published by President African. And this is an important work. For one, it was published in 1973. Now, keep in mind that date, because it's going to become very important for us. So this work by Theophile Obenga, which you can see, clearly as day at the top, that this is his book, right? And so I wonder, for anyone who is in a conscious community tier in emotional state, if they have that same smoke for Dr. Theophile Obenga for criticizing Km.t Diop's work. What do you mean, Brother Asar? I mean exactly what I just said. Dr. Theophile Obenga is in print criticizing Km.t Diop's work. And we about to go in on this. And so there's a number of critiques, but I'm only going to post 3 of them. And some of them get more in depth. And so, here it is in French on the right-hand side. And then here is my rough translation over here on the left. So let's look at this first critique of his. He says, once again, as strange as it may seem, the identity of pronouns and some other grammatical categories, formation of the plural, form of verb, conjugation, expression of the feminine, etc., between 2 or more languages does not mean that they are genetically related. And so he's trying to school Km.t Diop on the issue that just because you see the presence of some pronouns uh, and grammatical categories, which we would call necessarily topology, for those who are familiar with linguistics, that does not mean that they are genetically related. And so you would have to do a lot more work. And so he's talking about Km.t Diop's linguistic analysis in nations, negres, and I forgot the last part of the book. In nations, I think, or I said that before. So this is one of his critiques. So let's look at this second critique. With regard to the comparative study of Egyptian Wolof vocabulary, Km.t Diop establishes in nations, negatives, etc., the following correspondence. The Egyptian N is transformed into Wolof M, L. It should be an L right there. In what conditions? The lexicological facts accumulated by Km.t Diop himself seem rather to present this rule of correspondence as being an exception. We refer to examples where N is in the initial of the many facts that cover these pages. There are only 4 words confirming the rule of correspondence stated, which it seems is not very convincing. So it's interesting here. He's letting us know that a linguistic argument made by Km.t Diop is not convincing in terms of his sound correspondences. He only provides 4 examples, and he doesn't give us the rules that shows the correspondence between the 4. So this is a second critique. So let's go to critique number 3. And I have more. I just, for the sake of time, I'm not adding them all here. And so he goes in on Km.t Diop. And so the accepted transcription of the Egyptian word equivalent to joy is resh. And the Coptic also gives a hiss to the final rashi or rashi. The rest form retained by the illustrious African researcher, in other words, Km.t Diop, therefore does not seem to be correct. The Egyptian term would correspond to wulaf ray, to laugh, laughter. A question then arises, what rule would explain the disappearance of the Egyptian hiss sound in the corresponding wulaf word, right? And so, he's saying again that Km.t is not correct on a particular correspondence that you see here. And so, but notice that he's not malice against Km.t. And keep in mind that Obenga does not have a PhD in linguistics. Obenga has 3 master's degrees, one in history, one in education, one in philosophy. And then his PhD is in Greek philosophy. So he has no PhD in linguistics. But here he is coming as a linguist, challenging Km.t Diop's work. And keep in mind that this is 1973 that this is published. Why is that date significant? Because in 1974, 1 year later, is when both Km.t Diop and Théophile Obenga are involved in the famous Cairo Symposium together. And this is the reason why he brought Théophile Obenga with him, so that Théophile Obenga could take care of all the linguistic arguments. You will hear Obenga talk about how when Obenga wanted to speak on some other issues, Km.t Diop was like, no, you stick to the linguistics, right? So this is very important here. So there are individuals here in this social media community who thinks that it is a sin to have any kind of disagreement with Km.t Diop. And they try to disown you and speak ill of your name, and they don't even know about this history, because again, most of these individuals don't read or have access to the French materials. And secondly, they don't understand and don't know what science is and what it entails and what a researcher has to do in order to advance the conversation forward, which is why I say there's a difference between an enthusiast, a bibliophile, a teacher, and a researcher scientist. And too many times in this particular social media space, we have a bunch of enthusiasts who are trying to insert themselves into the scientist and researcher category and haven't done the basic work. And they make silly arguments all the time and cry, and think you're being condescending when you're telling them that they don't understand what's going on and that they don't know what they're talking about. And so, when we critique, we can critique without being malicious. And this is exactly what you see here from Théophile Obenga. And just because Théophile Obenga is a big name here, he's just an ordinary man like everybody else. And so you have other people, for example, Sheikh Tiajani Njaye, or Nja. This is just another spelling for Nja. This individual is from Senegal, speaks Wolof naturally, and is a PhD in linguistics. Why is he important? Because just like the way that Théophile Obenga goes in on Km.t Diop, this other linguist goes in on Théophile Obenga in defense of Km.t Diop. Right? And so you got to know this history in these folks. You can see them both here. This is I don't know how clear it is because I think the image was stretched. It was really small on the internet, but this is Dr. Njai and Théophile Obenga, on the left hand side. In this picture, you can see that if you can look carefully, Théophile Obenga don't look too happy. Why? Because this person is always going in on Théophile Obenga and some of the mistakes that he makes. In other words, nobody is safe from critique. And this is something that you all have to understand in the social media so-called conscious community space. And so anybody, crying over their work and trying to get personal with people because they can't stand critiques, that they are the bibliophiles, the individuals who quote unquote can't stand the rain, who don't know nothing about methodology, theory, and models, and just always in their feelings, right? And so, when it comes to the central position of Dr. Shekinah Diop on the meaning of Kemet, there are a couple of logical fallacies that he commits that have to be addressed. And in our 2019 book on, towards or a contribution to the meaning of the place name, or the debate on the meaning of the place name Kemet, that we published in 2019, we or at least I in my chapter, pointed out a couple of these logical fallacies that are that Diop makes. And so, so here's the path here. So, faulty logic one. When Shekinah Diop says a word of assembly is formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in the feminine singular. Premise two, Kemet from the adjective Kim equals black. And then his conclusion, and this is Shekinah Diop, it therefore means strictly Negroes, or at the very least, black men, right? And so this is fallacious for a number of reasons. In part because it does not offer an independent reason for the claim he is trying to support, which we call in logic and mathematics the dependency problem. In other words, Diop is trying to support something by supposing prove what he has yet to prove. So with Diop, what we're going to see when we go line by line in Diop's work is that he just makes an assumption, and then he goes off and makes further commentary on that assumption as if the assumption is true, without going through the steps necessary to provide proof of that, that hypothesis that he formed. And this is what I mean by Diop did not do the work. He commits this logical fallacy that we just discussed here. And so when we have questions like this, we have to ask: has the arguer, meaning the researcher, avoided the obligation to provide independent support for a claim by restating it in similar terms? So you got to be very careful when analyzing someone's text, and you got to be a critical thinker, and you got to understand logical fallacies and when somebody is putting forth one. Has the arguer avoided the obligation to provide independent support by assuming somewhere in the premises the very thing that has to be shown? So again, he goes over here and says a word of assembly is formed from an adjective or a noun by putting it in a feminine singular. Kemet from the adjective Kim equals black. He assumes that this is the case, and then he makes his conclusion. It therefore means strictly Negroes, at the very least black men, right? And so this is faulty logic here. You have to first establish that the word Kemet derives from a root Kim, meaning black, and there's a whole process that you have to do in order to come to that conclusion. And Diop does not do that in any of his works. And so we must ask of each premise the grounds on which we are to ask that we are asked to accept it as true and valid. Asking this question will expose cases in which we discover that the grounds by which we should accept a premise is the very point that we are supposed to see being proved in the conclusion. Where we can show this to occur, we have detected an instance of the fallacy of begging the question. So what Km.t does is a what we call a begging the question fallacy. So when you hear people say that begs the question, that's where this comes from. So, introducing this, you probably have to rewind it. If you have our text, it's in there on the methods chapter. So there's another logical fallacy that, both Km.t Diop and others commit on the record. It's called the Moat and the Bailey logical fallacy, right? And the Moat and the Bailey logical fallacy essentially is a combination of a bait and switch and an equivocation in which someone switches between a moat, therefore an easy to defend and often common sense statement, such as culture shapes our experiences, and a Bailey, a hard to defend and more controversial statement, such as cultural knowledge is just as valid as scientific knowledge. In order to defend a viewpoint, someone will argue an easy to defend position, therefore the moat, temporarily to ward off critics, while the less defensible position, the Bailey, remains the desired belief, yet it is never actually defended, right? Now, with this being said, this is what happens. So and this is where people get into their emotions and not use their critical thinking skills here. So this is the Moat and the Bailey. We can see on the walls of ancient Kemet that they depicted themselves as dark reddish, dark brown, and sometimes in black skin uh, throughout the text. So and they have, of course, these stereotypical facial features such as the lips, the noses, the hair, texture, and styles, and all this. And so, what people will say, this is the moat, that these are Black African people, talking about the ancient Egyptian. And what the Bailey is that Kemet therefore equals the Black people. And so they'll take, something that is easily defensible in terms of the ancient Egyptians being Black African people, and then throw in, they do a bait and switch. They bait you in with that, and then try to switch the conversation to the meaning of the word Kemet, the place name Kemet, the toponym, and saying that means Black people. Therefore, because they were Black African people, that this has to refer to them being Black people. It's the bait and switch, or the Moat and the Bailey logical fallacy. This is what's going on, and so this is something that we have to be careful of as scientists, and to slow the conversation down. And when anybody makes a claim, force them to defend it in a scientific manner that is suitable for scientists, and not do these logical fallacies in terms of the bait and switch. And another thing that I want to address is, this, I mentioned this earlier, that, again, 24 years of dealing with this conversation, and I constantly have to keep repeating certain things because people do not read, and they don't listen. And then most importantly, they don't comprehend anything. And so, a good example is, Netter Neb. So Netter Neb has been wrong for I don't know how many years now. And he loves being in his feelings and being wrong on social media. So he did a show some years ago, and he had the audacity to make this slide. And it's upsetting because we constantly tell Netter Neb that he doesn't know what he's talking about, and that he doesn't understand and comprehend things. But that's an error on our part, because if he doesn't understand and comprehend things, he's not going to understand when we tell him that he doesn't understand and comprehend things, right? So he This is addressing my 2014 article on Kemet that I mentioned, before in one of the other conversations. So in 2014, I wrote a response to uh, I wrote a response to some other folks who we were having this debate on EgyptSearch.com. And because it's a message board forum, and you have to go through so much to add photos and all this other kind of stuff, and to respond to everybody accurately, I just created a document with my rebuttals to a lot of the challenges and questions that those individuals on that message board created. So I made it public so that everybody can see it, and so Netterneb is responding to that 2014 article. Keep that in mind. So he says, so he tries to make an argument that asarimhotep, not one example of the name Kemet nation, uses a color determinative. So now he goes, according to James P. Allen grammar, in asarimhotep in quotes is inaccurate. Determinatives of color do not have to be always present. This is a simple beginner's grammar rule. And you got to say it like Netterneb. So you can't, this is a simple beginner's grammar rule. It is not, you get to do grammar. He always talking about grammar, don't know the damn ancient Egyptian grammar. And just be all over the place. And Golet's paper also confirms that the Kim glyph is frequently seen with no determinative. Another grammar example that the term Kim do not always employ determinatives, right? And so this is important because now we have in 2022 our good brother Smash Rockwell, who also doesn't comprehend and don't read anything, who is just parroting Netterneb and his wrongness on this subject, and thinks that he's schooling somebody, by pointing out that there are color words that always are not present, that the determinatives are not always present in the words, like they're schooling somebody, like y'all introducing me like I'm new to this. And so if you actually go to the 2014 article on page 7 of the text, this is exactly what I say. I say, for example, we have the variations Kim, black, and Kimu, to be in the dark. The first variant is also used to convey the word Kim, to be blind, as to be blind is to be in a continual state of darkness, blackness. Another variant is given as Kim, to be black. These examples are taken from Vigus 2012. But one can look at Budge 787b for even more examples of this determinative for words meaning black. We note then that the D3 glyph is used to convey color. In each of these variants, the word is followed by the D3 hair determinative. The word Kim, black, and look what I have highlighted here, can be written without the determinative for hair, as can be seen in this variant, Kim, black. But this omission is still rooted in the variants above. In other words, we have the variant with the D3 determinative as representative of the more fuller sense, and it gives us a point in which to cross-check if the scribe decided to omit the glyph, which is very common in Egyptian writing. The syntax and the context of the sentence allows for us to make the distinction. So this is why I can't take any of these guys serious, and I don't respond all the time to them, because they don't read and they don't comprehend, and they make arguments that we don't argue. They're arguing against Ghost, and I don't know if Smash has ghost writers, for any of his rhymes, so he's so used to dealing with Ghost in that fashion. And I'm just messing with you. That's shots fired. But they're arguing and constantly making arguments against positions that we don't hold, against statements that we never made. And so we're wondering, who the hell are y'all talking to? It's just a damn shame how sloppy these individuals are. But let's stay focused today, right? So before we go directly into Km.t Diop's work, I have to mention this. I have to do this a lot. And so this is a text, the Continuum Companion to Historical Linguistics, edited by Sylvia Luragi and Vit Bubenik, right? And the author for this chapter is Thomas Critch, and it is on how to do etymology, right? And so remember that the etymology of, or the meaning of the place name Kemet is a linguistic argument. And in order for us to get, a full understanding of its meaning and evolution and context, we have to do an etymological study. So this is why, you always hear me consistently talking about the etymology of the place name Kemet. And this is what the process consists of. So the big difference, and I'm reading from the text, the big difference between Socrates' approach and a modern etymology is that nowadays one tries to argue systematically in all strata, in phonology, in morphology, and in semantics pragmatics, and also extra linguistically in philology and culture. One also has to take into account historical developments. If one wants to be a productive and successful expert in etymology, one has to thoroughly study all the areas mentioned, right? So anybody claiming to do etymological work has to bring the lexemes under examination in all six of these strata. In other words, there's phonology, morphology, semantics, and pragmatics. Those are the linguistic strata. The extra linguistic, the non-linguistic strata is philology, culture, and history. And keep in mind, philology is just the study of text. The study of text does not constitute linguistics. And this is where a lot of confusion is. You're thinking that just because you can read something in a text, that you are now being involved in a linguistic process. And that is not the case. So you got to understand where you're at in this subject, and what skill set do you actually have, and why you're not being able to comprehend certain arguments, because you don't understand the process of how etymology works. And so he continues, in the 19th and 20th century, starting with Jacob Grimm, Franz Bopp, and Rasmus Rask, the comparative method based on strict morphological, phonological, and lexical comparison was developed. The most important output of this research was the discovery of sound laws, which mediate between cognate languages, their respective older stages, and their common predecessors. This research in turn relies on good etymologies of words that exemplify the sound laws and the regularities of word formation. And so the process of establishing good etymologies in the relationship between languages depends on the sound laws that you create. And so when we examine Km.t Diop on this one question here, he does not do good etymological work. He does not go through all six of these strata here. And in the upcoming book, I make my arguments in all six strata, so that no one can make an argument that I have not gone through this process when coming to my conclusion, on the meaning of the place name Kemet. So keep that in mind. right? And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause right here, right? And now I'm going to go switch to this text. And so, I think I have my phone out. So I'm going to go and make sure that y'all can see this, well. And let me see. All right. So I see Neb is in the chat, and of course he's always going to be in his feelings because he don't know how things work. So this is an early scan of Km.t 1977 work. It's not the whole thing. We didn't scan the whole book, just some important parts because didn't have the book at the time, and I actually lost my version of it. So, and I thank Brother Sanjetti because he recently took some photos for me of other aspects of the book, which we'll get into a little bit later, right? So this is from the text, which I guess we would translate in English, the genetic relationship between ancient Egyptian and Negro African languages. And so, as you can see here, the beginnings of this text, he is doing actual vocabulary and grammar comparisons. Some of these things you may see in other works, just kind of snippets, but his full analysis is in this text. And and even though you see these here, some of these are questionable. And this was brought out because other scholars were not able to verify some of the forms and the words that Km.t had in this analysis here. And I've been searching for verification of these forms as well. And I remember way back, maybe in 2003 or 2004, I met an individual from Senegal who actually studied with and under Km.t. And he told me that what Km.t. did was he interviewed some elders, from the countryside who didn't live in the city. And a lot of these is his reconstructions based on some of his own personal work that no one else has been able to verify since then. So we gotta keep that in mind when we're talking about some of his grammar forms and correspondences. But so he mentions earlier the Egyptian Kim, Black, Kemet, the Negroes, the Egyptians, right here, and his alleged equivalent, which is Kim, and he's inconsistent. I mean, he's inconsistent on these forms that you find in his work, and you know exactly what I mean. So he has Kim here, Khem, black and charcoal. That's what he has here, and then Kemet, the product of that which is burnt or carbonized, as some of his other forms to say. That's kind of what you see here. So let me see, go down some more. So so I just want y'all to kind of see like there's actual, and so this is why it's also stupid of like Smash and Ned or Neb making the argument that that I said that Km.t never made any comparison, any linguistic comparisons. That's not what I said. And you will, for at least everyone else, since y'all seem to have comprehension issues of exactly what I say and what I mean, that's not it. Y'all will be able to better understand. So you can see, some of his, fuller arguments, here. And then we get to chapter 5. So this is chapter 5, right? And let me go here. So, all righty. So this is the text. So keep in mind that his argument for Kemet is essentially 3 or 4 pages. It's really kind of three, but it ends on the 4 page. So it goes to page. Let me see. My bad. Maybe 5 pages. So it is. What is that? That's one. So 92, 93, 94, 95, and then kind of ends there. So from page 92, 3, 4, 5. So it's just 4 pages, as I said. So this is kind of like half a page right here. So notice that there is no series, and this is exactly what I said, that there is no series, no comparative series between the words Kim or the words in the Egyptian language that have Kim as the root and words in the Wolof language. He just only deals with this word black. And remember what we said when it came to the doing etymology, that this research in time relies on good etymologies of words that exemplify sound laws and irregularities of word formation. And Km.t Diop does not do that in this text. He just takes one word, and you can see this form here. So remember, I said he's Km.t Diop is inconsistent in what forms of the word that he's comparing. So in that other one that we saw on page 41, let's go back to page 41. Here we go. You can see he has Kim, Kemet, and then he has in Wolof KHEM, black, charcoal, right? But when we go to page 92, where am I? Oh, that's back. I went too far. Here we go. He has HEM. So this was, initially confusing for me because anyone who knows about, phonology and the like, we have to be consistent with, how we're representing. And so, in kind of modern dictionaries, what he's representing as this sound here is usually going to be given as an X in the dictionaries, right? So let's read what he says. So you know uh, this is particular expressions and terms in French. What he's saying here. So what he does first is he does the comparison, the Kim, and this is a pile of burning coals, and in the actual water bush, he'll have another word there that means Kim, which is a kind of a cooking stove. But he doesn't put that in here. And he says to carbonize or to burn or whatnot. And this is what is he saying here? It is not erroneous then for this hieroglyph to be taken to mean the scales of a crocodile. And he puts it in quotation. Excuse me. He puts it. He ends it with a question mark. And so what he's saying is you know, um, or he's asking the question, if this is a pile of coal, right? Then how do we equate this to crocodile skin, or the tail of a crocodile, right? So that's what he's saying here. And then you have this in Wolof on the right hand side, him, charcoal, and then hamba. This ends with an MB, to I guess to light, a fire, or to light a fire. So fuse fire. So this is what he's saying. So then he starts off. He says um, that this is uh, indeed, or indeed, this is the root, which etymologically signifies black coal. So that bois charbon is black coal, right? Uh, that the ancient Egyptians utilized to designate themselves ethnically. And so when you see that word mint or mint at the end, which I don't kind of pronounce a T, that's equivalent to li, the suffix in English, and to designate their country. In effect, it has the following variants. And so Kim, black, uh, him, to carbonize, and it really, I don't know if that's really to carbonize to, or you should just say, charcoal in that sense. But to get, because it ends in, er, we know that it is in fact a verb. But but it that can be translated as well as just simply charcoal unto itself, or coal in general. So what Km.t Diop, and then he goes Kemet, the Egyptians, the Negroes, the blacks, literally, right? So what he's doing is that he's taking the notion that there's an entry in the water bush that means a pile of burning coals, but and then he's comparing it to this Wolof word, which means charcoal or coal. Uh, but there's a problem here. Firstly, this is not the word for, there's no word in the Egyptian language for charcoal. And then when you actually go into other dictionaries, and this has been a critique of Diop's, by African and European scholars, is that a lot of his terms do not match what he's talking about here. So we're in this dictionary. So it's at 261. Let me go back here. This is what dictionary is this? This is the Wolof dictionary. Um, so that y'all know what source I'm using here is a Bati Wolof, a Wolof dictionary, revised edition, and published in 1997 by Pamela Monroe and Janaba Gay, UCLA, paper in linguistics number 19. So let's go back to 261. So this is the English, from the English. So beforehand is the Wolof to English, and then after that is the English to Wolof correspondences. So let's go to charcoal. You have this word Karin, and it's kind of like a nya sound. It's like an N and Y or I together. Karin. Or we have hot charcoal, and it's so remember what I said, that in Diop's work, where he has either KH or H, in modern dictionaries, they normally just place an X there, to represent that sound. So if you see that, like in the comparisons that you see, I use the modern, uh, you know, uh, grapheme to represent that sound, because you can kind of get confused when you're dealing with Diop. So this is not. So they don't have this word, and you go to any other uh, dictionary, and you won't be able to find it. So let's go look for coal, just coal by itself. And what does it have for that correspondence? Oh, maybe I should learn my ABCs and go in the right direction. So we was at charcoal. We seen those two words, and then so we have coals to cook on hops. So we have rep, REPP here. And so you can see that when it comes to words for coal, we do not have the same the same words as with Diop, so it's kind of hard to verify. And even when I looked up the word for burn, right? Let's go to burn. You can see kind of what we go through when we're kind of doing this work. So burn, la, the burn bright and hot, yan, burn down to coals, to raf, burn off the ends of hair for to lakat, and burn on the bottom to him. So this is the word that Km.t is using. And so when we go back, to the form here, that's why, in most, I'm not a native French speaker, but this can be translated as to carbonize or to burn, or just in the noun form as charcoal itself. So either way it goes, whether you're talking about charcoal or whether you're talking about to burn, this is what he has here. So you can see in the dictionary that same word here. It means to burn the bottom of something, right? And so that's what he's equating, but that's not the issue here. And so, for example, let me open up a tab. When we go to the TLA, and we type in, for example, Kim. So here's the word, right? That Diop is cited. It's a pile of burning coals and kill. Word to Bush, Volume 5, page 122:10. And so beforehand, this used to have a red dot on it, meaning that it is unattested. And when you see a yellow dot in the database, this means that they have at least found it in somebody's work, but that does not mean it is attested. So only when you see the green dots are these words actually that the people behind this project were able to verify that it actually exists. And so when you click on it, that's why they don't, this is the image that comes up. And I don't know, let's see. So see what most people don't know is that image of Kim, it is not attested in any text. There is no Kim burning coals or to burn or whatnot. It doesn't exist in the language. What the document is referring to is just simply these set of notes that has a list of hieroglyphs. And in the book that I'm coming out with in September, I tell you who's the one who originated the idea that this is probably a pile of coals. But this is not attested anywhere. It's just a suggestion that was made by an earlier scholar. It's a German scholar. And then the Ehrman and Grappal compilers put it in the dictionary, but there's no attestation to it. All attestations refer to this document that you see right here. So off the bat, we have a problem with Diop's argument because this is a non-existing word, and he's comparing an actual Wolof word to an Egyptian word that doesn't exist, right? And so any argument that he makes from this is null and void because this word doesn't exist in the language, right? And so let's read a little bit more of what Km.t said. So he's essentially saying that this term, the most, when you see that plus, or the plus right here, the most, very, more, many is kind of many definitions, but the most or the strongest when you put this together, because fort means, like like a fort, a stronghold. So it's the most powerful or strongest and most explicit term which existed in the Pharaonic language, designating blackness, and the Egyptians did not apply it to the Nubians, but to themselves. So this is a point that Ujawu and I have been making for years. That it's interesting that when it came to the blacks, they never applied the term Kim to any of the Nubian nations, especially those who were 20 times darker than them. And that is something significant that even Km.t Diop had to realize. And so what he says is it or becomes a collective form or collective term by putting it in the adjective, the adjective black in the feminine singular, followed by the determinative composed of a man or a woman. And so when I read off the premises of Diop, this is where it originates. But there's an English translation in the what do you call it? The UNESCO General History of Africa, Volume 2, where he kind of talks about this as well. And so you can read those premises. Let me get back to where is Diop, so you can see some of his conversation, but you can see like it's in the volume 2 where he gives some of his analysis. So this is where we go. So the Egyptians had only one term to designate themselves, Kemet, the Negroes, literally. And and he goes on from there. And so some of that argument originates in, well, I can't say originate. Well, I don't know. It depends on when this was actually published, the French version at least. So they may have done them all at the same time. But you can see that argument here, right? And so the formation of the collectives, and so it is a matter of a precise grammatical rule of ancient Egyptian which governs the formation of the collective nouns. And if conversely one wishes to translate the word black into Egyptian thematically, the only, adequate, or the sole term, or the, you could say the only adequate, or the only adequate term is here, for all the translations, or the only adequate term for or all other renderings, if you want to use that word, would be the grammatically incorrect or fanciful, or fantastical, or fantasticity. So this would be erroneous or fantastical. Um, this term is attested in the Cahun Papyrus. So that's what he's saying in the Lexic, page 347. And so that Lexic right there, that's actually a dictionary. And I have that dictionary. And if y'all want that dictionary, I can send it to y'all. Just got to send me an email, but it's in French. You got to read it. You got to be able to read French to get it. So that's what it is saying. So then he comes with Kemet, the black, Egypt, the country of the blacks. You can see that he's inserting definitions that are not in the dictionary. So he's trying to say the black. This does not mean the blacks. There's no dictionary that argues that. So we got to keep in mind that this is his definition that he is adding in here, for that particular term. And so it says remarkably or in the same way that they say like Black Africa and White Africa are the expressions actually allusion to his colors, a man, and the name of the sun. I don't know what he's talking about there. And so we can skip what we can see here. This is where he talks about the so like if he's given a translation of this term here. We dealt with this in our text. The the king of the black countries and the red, or the white, the red and the white countries, or rouge. What's red here? Um, and he's saying the white lands, but I don't know why he has the white lands here, because there's no word for white. And so what Km.t Diop is doing is arguing, that this kind of, like when he's saying the red lands, that this is their reference for white people. And so that's why he's saying the king of the black countries and the whites, but he puts in parentheses here the reds, when actually it should just be the red lands, because that's what you see here, Deseret, with the foreign land determinatives, the hills. So I don't know why he put whites there. That's confusing for those who don't read the metanetrics. And matter of fact, here is the citation where he names the African brother who proposed the Kemet equals black people. It wasn't Km.t Diop's original idea. It was this guy here, Sosu in Sugan. But he doesn't tell us, anything about this individual. And I have not been able to find anything about him in, online and in kind of dictionaries. So he just may have been just like a local friend of Km.t Diop. And, but he was originally supposed to write something on this, and I'm assuming that either he just disappeared or he passed away prior to him being able to work this out. So this is why Diop picked up the mantle and continued the conversation on Kemet equaling black, right? So let me continue here. And so this is just another variation of the same text. And then, so this is another thing that he misunderstands. So again, Km.t Diop is not reading the text directly. What Km.t Diop is doing is going into the dictionaries and just taking the definitions coming out of the dictionaries without doing the extra step in verifying the entries in the dictionaries. So this is when you hear everybody talking about Kemet, this means the Egyptians, and he says in opposition to other peoples or other stranger foreigners. And so the Negroes, the blacks, etymologically. And so this is a no. And we've already dealt with this. And I wonder, do I have any of those slides up? Because I get tired of correcting individuals, because keep that up. Let me see. See what, and I got some of these. Let's see, because I know we dealt with this already, and I want to make sure this is known again. And of course, if people would have read the text we already cited and went through that process, so I gotta excuse me. Y'all know how many PowerPoints I have on the Kemet debate? It's ridiculous. And that's why I get, I have to kind of search through everything, because we've addressed certain different things at different points in our arguments, over the years. So let me get out of here and let me go back, because I know it was one of them we dealt with. Methodology. I may have to come back to it, because but I want to address this now, because I may have to. How do I? Okay, I'm gonna give it one more before I. That's maybe that. Y'all forgive me. So we just, kind of not in a formal way. Y'all could hit them with y'all. Could hit y'all with this tonight, but I want to stay focused on something. And so I'll do one more. What was that other one I saw? What was that? Here we go. So let's go here. So it's interesting that so y'all please forgive me for kind of veering off for a second, but we cited this already in the text. I cited this in the 2019 text in Alluja Volume 2, and I'll be citing it again in the 2022 text, on the race and identity of the ancient Egyptians. And so this is an Egyptology journal by the Society or the French Society of Egyptology, as you can see here. And this is published in 1975, right? This is years after the last Wartubush was published. So remember that I said that Km.t Diop is citing the Km.t from the Wartubush dictionary, meaning the Egyptians. But that is an error in the Ehrman and Grappal Wartubush. And this error was already corrected 2 years prior to Km.t Diop publishing his 1977 work, which we are examining right now. So on page 146, and this is Serge Sonaron, his article, right? And on that page, in his article, on this issue, because he's examining the pyramid text of Pepe, right? And so here's his that I just cut it out here, and so here's the translation of the text. So Serge Sonaron, the same Serge Sonaron who Theophile Obenga at the 1974 symposium said was the foremost expert in Egyptian language and grammar, right? So we got to keep that in mind. So a year after the symposium, we have this article, which is 2 years before Km.t Diop's 1977 text. So what he says is, we have for a long time interpreted Km.t as Egyptians. An interpretation in an essay by Otto was presented in that German text, in that journal. And so Faulkner in Ancient Egyptian Pyramid Text, page 288 and 327, assumed that it was the people of Athribis. The presence of the bull and pamphlet in our new text of Pepe the Firm confirms this hypothesis. Kimweri is mentioned as such in pyramid text or pyramid text section 556c, right? So they've already corrected this, that when you see Km.t in the dictionaries or in the text, this is not referring to Egypt and therefore Egyptians. It is referring to Athribis, which is a town in Delta. And so, to use Ned or Nebs, this is peer reviewed. This is a peer reviewed journal. If you ain't talking about peer review, I ain't trying to hear nothing. This is a peer reviewed journal
by the foremost in Egyptian language and grammar, according to Theophile Obenga. In this peer-reviewed journal, it already corrects everyone when thinking that Km.t means the Egyptians. It does not. It means the people of Athribis. And we'll go over the entire section of that Pepe 1 text in the future, and to show that they are in fact correct. And this is why, the confusion of Reggie and the sacred bull, and this is when he's not reading, he doesn't understand the context and everything, because he hasn't read the whole thing and he hasn't done his own analysis, right? So we're gonna get it in. So we already, remember, this is a different, we've already addressed Ned or Neb's mishandling of people's mischaracterizing things. And so we're going to go back to Diop now, right? So so we're just going to go through, we're going to go line by line. So, he says this term is imposed, to this form desheret to you, which means the reds, the evil beings that thought annihilated. And this is the Nisbe form of desheret, or deret. I don't know why he puts, desheret, the red, as the first is, or the former of particular in terms of Kemet, the blacks. So he's just doing the opposition and comparison of these two terms. So just as the first is formed, so this as the first is formed by the part of Kemet, the black. So, but he says it would be ridiculous to translate this as the inhabitants of the desert. That's what he says here. But in effect, for the Egyptians, God is black. The beneficent deities are black. The evil beings are red. Black is the divine color, and red is, essentially the evil color, right? So that's what it says here. The black is. I don't even know if y'all can see my mouse. It's just kind of a crosshairs right now. It says, so the savage animals that Horus combated or fought or went to war with is or fought against in creating the civilization were red, or Desheret, the hippopotamus in particular. And so we have Desher here, the Nile horse, the hippopotamus, right? So we go into Seth, who is the evil spirit of a sterile nation, of a sterile nature, is Desheret Reg. In fact, in all here which precede, red and white are synonymous. And so, by contrast, the following epithets and surnames are applied to the gods. It goes Kim Word, the Great Black, Osiris, God, ancestral God of the race, and he does his misinterpretation of Anu, and that's a whole nother. That has already been debunked. And then Kim, Black, name of the god. Kemet, the black, the name. Another goddess named Hathor, Apis, Men, Thoth, Horus, etc. Then he gives these examples of Set Kemet, the black woman, and it really should just be Isis, the black. But he comes here with Set Wolof, black, spouse or wife, woman, as charcoal, and
This phrase here. But notice what you're seeing here. There's no comparison. We can go line by line and read every single thing. There is no comparison. He doesn't do the steps. And so anytime someone makes the argument, make them show you where the steps were taken in this. So he does no sound correspondence, no series of sound correspondences in chapter 5. He just starts naming some gods that are black, and then so we already established that, for one, this does not exist. There is no Kim, pile of burning coals in the Egyptian language. So his argument that the color black derives from the process of burning or coals, or to light a fire, that corresponds, that is not correct. That is not the semantics that gives us the word black in the Egyptian language. And so, and secondly, when he says commit to you, this is not the word for Egyptians. When they wanted to refer to Egyptians, it was always Remech in Kemet, the people of Kemet. Never commit to you. They never use commit to you to refer to the Egyptians. You can only find that term really in the pyramid text, in reference to Kemet were, right? And so, this is when we get into the whole desert. All he talks about here is the contrast between the red and the black in terms of the people of the desert. But he's already built his argument on faulty premises. So anything that he says after this point regarding this is erroneous, and it has to be dismissed. And so this is why you can't skip steps. You have to go through all of these things when you're doing etymology. And remember that it's Diop who argued etymology. He introduced etymology into the equation. And let's find. So here we go. Km.t, the Egyptians, by opposition of other peoples or the strangers, foreigners, the Negroes, the blacks, etymologically. So he's invoking etymology into the conversation, but he doesn't do any etymological work. And anybody saying that he has done, the comparative method, and that he came to his conclusion as a result of comparing what page, what's the page number? I have the text here. We can go again line by line. You will not see these comparisons. He does not do it. So you don't see any kind of comparisons like he does here with these words. So what you're going to have to do is go to the earlier part of the text and to see if he does any kind of Kim there, because he doesn't do it in chapter 5. So, when he starts his analysis, so this is the kind of towards the kind of middle of the book, where he's doing vocabulary comparisons between ancient Egyptian on the left and Wolof on the right. And we start the K's on page 338. So I think it's like page 338 for those who have the text, to like 342, I believe. 342 or 343, right? So this is the Q. This is a different set of words here. So we're going to start with the K. So he starts with the K here with the word ka, which is meaning a conjunction. And it's used in a grammatical sense as a conjunction in the meta nature. And so he corresponds this with the conjunction, and in the Wolof language. So I think this is a solid comparison. So I have no arguments here. And then we have, the word ka, which he's saying that is, part of the immortal being, of the individual, which rejoins in the heavens or the skies, saying with the at death, But he compares this to a word meaning height and ceiling, or not ceiling, the sky or heavens, right? And then also with this word ka, meaning a proper name in Fulani. I cannot accept this correspondence here because this is not, there's no correlation. See, what Sheikh Diop tried to do here is that he tried to connect the fact that the uh, the ka is joined after death, in the heavens, to try to make it seem as if there's kind of like a play on words here. Uh, but that's not the case. And so we've gone through this word a million times, and this word for spirit here has to deal with power, and which we get into on the second page. This is page 339. So he has, Ka soul, or the immortal soul here, and he still connects it with the heavens, etc. This is not a good correspondence. I cannot accept that correspondence. And there's a word here, Ka, meaning a name. And so what he says in Wolof, it corresponds to Ka, a proper name. And that is not a good correspondence, because you don't tell us what Ka means in Wolof. So he's just depending on the words sounding alike. And so this is not a good correspondence. And we could see the same, throughout these. And you have to be careful with Diop's correspondences, because he makes a lot of room, semantic room, and connections without any explanations. And this is something that has been pointed out by scholars, a number of other scholars, some which I've challenged, like you would see at the beginning in my introduction to um, in Alluja Volume 2, when I was challenging Shku, who was making arguments against Diop, uh, and I had to show how Diop was right on many of his correspondences, but I had to agree with Shku that a lot of them, that Diop is just equally wrong on the correspondences, in the same way that Theophile Obenga, had to let him know in his critique on some of his earlier correspondences. So this is why it's important that when you're doing linguistic research, learn the skill set so that you can do the entire thing yourself and not depend and have to rely on anybody else's correspondences. All you need is their dictionaries, or if you did any kind of primary field research, you know, uh, the recordings that you did initially, and you're able to do this on your own. Is exactly what I did here. And so this starts the K correspondences in a C1 position for Sheikh-Anta Diop. And I think these are solid right here. These on that which, and those who, etc. right here, like these are good here. And I'm not so sure about these here, uh, but we're going to now the other pages. So he continues here. So it starts on page 340, where you see now we get into the actual the Kim references, right? So you see here, what is this? So you see here, he says, again, he's going off of charbon, um, and to kind of burn and charcoal and stuff. And so we've already shown that that is not a verified term. It's a ghost word in the Egyptian language. And those who understand how dictionaries are compiled knows about ghost words. So this is just I forgot what this word is. Somebody who read French. I think this is like group, or like a pile. So yeah, so a pile of coal, a pile of burning coals. So, and this is wood. So this is burning wood, and specifically. But that's so again, he's comparing it here to this word for either to burn the bottom of something. That's in our modern dictionaries. That's how it's defined. But again, remember, this word can also be translated as charcoal. If he's using this in a charcoal sense, then I can't. You already know why we can't accept it. And so then we have here black metal, and so this is the word for metal, and then Kim meaning black. And so this is what's interesting is that this word here, null, is the actual word for black in the Wolof language. So let's go back to the dictionary that we mentioned earlier. So let's go to black. And I've spoken with many people who speak Wolof, and they do not use him to mean black. They would describe anything as black. They will use it in the sense of something that has been burnt at the bottom, just kind of what you said here. So doing some field research, it has allowed me to get clarity on how that was used. But I think there's another way in which it is used, and we'll probably have to ask our good brother Aziz Fall, because he's the one who told me. But let's look at the word here. So the word for black in Wolof is nur. So this is not him, and it is not. He does not even use this as cognate with the word kin black. So what Diop tries to do is use a word meaning to burn to be equivalent with the word black in the language. In the Wolof language, that is not the case. This is the word for black. So when they want to say the black hair dye, it's nulel. Black horse, nul. Black people, you have to say this entire phrase. Nit nu. Black person, nit kunu. Black person who is half white and half black. Metis. To be black is nul. To be very black is nul kuk. To dye black, nulel, as we saw up there. To have one's be black. I don't know how to pronounce that. Some Wolof speaker, you help me out here. To make black, the causative of it, nulel. And a blacksmith is teg, blacksmith's hammer, sadu. Then it goes on to other words. So we can see here that, when we're trying to come back behind Diop on certain of these questions, we can't verify it. And I go through a number, and this is not the only dictionary that I have. So remember that when on this question, I went through a number of Wolof dictionaries, and I talked to a number of native Wolof speakers. So I'm not just basing, this on this one dictionary. So we can get that out of the way. So where am I going? Where was I before? Oh, so back here. So he doesn't even try to find a cognate for black in Wolof with Egyptian. And so all of his entries, as we will see, he just interprets them as black. So now he reinterprets him to mean black. And it's a dealing with a burning process to turn something at the bottom black. But that does not mean black. It's actually a verb. So let's go back to burn, right? This is a verb that he's using. Let me see. Here we go. So, you have all these are the primary words. And even when you go into Fulani and other related words, these are the primary words for to burn in the language, lachi. And you can find a cognate for this in Egyptian. But in to burn down the coals is raf. But to burn on the bottom of something is him. So, the words can change, applications and meanings over time. So maybe at the time in which he was writing, it was still used to mean to burn something or to carbonize, as some people would translate it, right? But this is a verb. It is not the adjective black. It's not used as an adjective to mean black in the language. And so we have a problem here. And so let's go down further. So we have the Kim, for the pupil, the black part of the eye in opposition to the white part of the eye, the hedge. And so he's still comparing him, black or to burn, but it's not the same word as, he doesn't have the same word for pupil. Let's see if this dictionary has a word for pupil. Maybe I need to open up another browser or something so I can check the chat to see if our good brother Aziz is there and he can tell me what the word for pupil is. Pupil of the eye, that is, not a student. Is this searchable? Nope. OP. You down with OPP? Old school hip hop, y'all youngins don't know nothing about that. Let me get into it. Oh, did I pass it? Guess they do not have it. Nope, they do not have it in here. So I have to open up another dictionary and see if they have it. So, excuse, this isn't like my normal conversation where I just kind of have everything ready in slides, because we just got to go through this. But, he has this, he's comparing this word here for white or brilliant, hot, huge, to this word here. But, he's betting on this, the word for pupil having its origin in the word for black, and so he's still comparing. So notice what I'm saying. He's using only the words that he knows has a root in Kim black, and he's only comparing black. He's only using in his definitions the word for black, but he doesn't use any of the other words in general that have the KM root to establish some sound laws. And so, and I have a problem with this, and which we deal in a book, because people think that the word Kim and Kemet, meaning cattle, and black has to deal with the word meaning black, and it's not the case. It's actually a word for cattle. It's actually a word for bull or cow. But he's also using this name of a proper name of a person as a correspondence, and that doesn't, until you are able to define what the word is. So remember this: when in linguistics, when you're talking about cognates, a cognate must stand on two legs, that is form and meaning. Unless you know the meaning of a term, you cannot say that they are cognate unless you go through the whole etymological process, which we do in Illusion Volume 2 and in the upcoming book. But you see here, we're just talking about the black cow goddess, here, and so it's all the words for black. So black, bull, sacred bull. Also dealing with Apis, so the god men, and Tho. But he doesn't provide a word for bull, or cow in the language. And so, here's Kim, black, the name of the Serapeum of Memphis. We don't know if that word means black, but he compares it to his rendering of the word meaning to burn at the bottom, which he is redefining as black. And then we have here the great Kim word, the great black, the name of Athribis, And then again, he's comparing it to the word black. And there's reason to believe that this Kim and Kim were has nothing to do with black either. We deal with that in the book. And so there's no real comparison between the other words. Everything he's just using what he's deeming as a word for black in Wolof, and just attributing it to all of the forms that you see here. And this cannot, and then again, he does a Km.t again, the blacks, the inhabitants of uh, the blacks, or the black land, I guess, the Egyptians in opposition to the foreigners or the strangers. And then Kimi, Osiris, like this is correct in terms of the Kimi dealing with black. But you see how they have the actual determinative that they use for black here, and they do the same thing with Aset. This is always missing from Egypt or any other epithet, for anyone else. We discussed that in the book, but again, it's always black. So, he does the same thing here. The black, just everything he just interprets as black. So it's just black, 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 black. He doesn't deal with any of the others. And this starting from this one here. There's a whole new set of words. So we don't look at them. But there's a arkim towards, because this literally means towards the end, towards the edge. And so he's saying there's a nikim in the language dealing with a dimension. I don't know if it's a time or what, but he's saying word for word or word by word. And it's the same thing here in terms of to the limit of something. So these are really kind of the same. So actually they're not. This is to the limit of, this is towards a long time.
Attention wagner shoppers.
So
please take a moment to check your
so he
shopping
does. So
cart.
the
If
only
you find
two
that you
words
have
that he
the wrong
really
one, please
he brings here is words dealing with either the cattle, the word for to end or to complete. But he never really discusses the end or complete. It's really just the word for edge in this form here. But he doesn't just by himself just use the word for Kim, complete, in here or any of the other variations. So this is what becomes, a bit problematic, for us here. So, but he does do it like in this one. So not, at the end, right? So, but he says it's word for word at the limit. Is near. At the he's given a Wolof word for this jur here, the Jaru, a frontier of something. So he's saying the frontier at the edge of the limit. So he does kind of deal with it here. So I take that back as far as the word for end and complete. So he does deal with it here, and then in this sense of end, he's saying the kind of the limit, the edge of it. So let me see if there's anything after that. But you can see that he's not really he's really not going in. And what do I mean by not going in? So now this is when we go back to the PowerPoint. So let's do from this slide here. And so I talk about this a lot, and because y'all know my methodology, and there are others who use this as well, independent of me. And one of the ones I like to cite is from Frank Camerzel in a text called Old Egyptian and Creole Egyptian, Tracing Linguistic Diversity in Archaic Egypt and the Creation of the Egyptian Language, which was published in 2001. And so, he's essentially making some arguments that there may be a correlation between Indo-European and the Egyptian language. And he's saying one of the ways in which we can tell is, for example, when you have like two consonant roots in sequence, and they're homographs, and they mean totally different things, and you find them in two or more unrelated languages, this would essentially be an impossibility. That there has to be some logical explanation for that other than chance. So he says here, in either system, there's a similar groups of semantically distinct lexemes which share the same phonological shape or matching groups of phonologically distinct lexemes having the same meaning. So, for example, the roots of the consonantal shape ML serve to express the semantic concepts of black, sing, and weak in Indo-European as well as in Egyptian. Since there are no apparent universal conceptual resemblances between the concepts of blacks to sing and weak, the probability that two distinct languages denote these meanings by means of the same root independently from each other is extremely small. In other words, virtually non-existent. So this is why when I do my correspondences, I always do it in this format, to where we highlight what the root is. You can see my correspondence to language A and language B in the middle column, and then you can see exactly what the sound correspondences are here. So notice that when Diop does his work, he doesn't use, and these are all in the Wörterbuch. He doesn't compare, for example, Kemet dorsal fin with that I can do in Chiluba, Musalala, fin, flipper, Kim service, duty, work, Salah to do, Kim to pay, Selah to pay the dowry for his wife. And here, Kemet, Egypt, and then I put Musulu, river, brook, stream, creek. And the reason why I put this here is because you can see in this rendering of Kemet, you see the river and canal glyph. And I get into the details of that in the upcoming book, but you can get a preview in Alluja Volume 2. And then Kim, complete, to put to an end to, Sula, to be finished, completed, Kusala, at the end of, point of, the limit of, the boundary of, at the border, edge, margin, bank, beach, or shore, or coast, right? And then Sakim with the causative prefix, to bring to an end, to finish, to spin, we can see corresponds with Sudisha, to go through until the end, finished. And that sha is the same causative morpheme, it's just suffixed in Bantu and prefixed in Egyptian. And the L sound becomes D when followed by I. So you got to know the sound rules in each language. But you see how I have, I deal with each one of these different roots in the language, and I can find the simple correspondences that match exactly, what is in the Egyptian language. And this is how you do it. This is what I mean by showing your work, so that you can establish the sound correspondences. So the sound correspondences, the sound laws, are ancient Egyptian K, the first consonant position corresponds to Chiluba S in the first consonant position. In the second consonant position, where Egyptian has M, it corresponds to the L and D sounds in the second consonant position in Chiluba. And I can do this for other words in the language, and it'll be KM at the same time, even in the same language in Chiluba. So this is why when we get and I meant to put this a little earlier, but when we look at the words for charcoal, like this is one of the reasons why we know that Kim doesn't mean charcoal. It has nothing to do with charcoal, because the Egyptians only had one word for charcoal, and this is this word jabit, but it's a derivative term, but it actually is really not just simply charcoal. It's fuel, material for a fire, and it can also be dung, like animals dung, anything that is fuel for a fire. That's what this word means. So it can include charcoal, it can be wood, it can be cow's dung. It doesn't simply mean charcoal. And it could be also the stuff that is used to make the incense, the kind of seed used in making the incense, which you can see here. So this is the word coming out of the Egyptian text, and you see Ja'ab, coal black, and then ja'abit, cold. So only when the T suffix is added to this root, meaning black or coal black, do you get this word for coal? That's what this is, charcoal, black pigment, right? But this word here, and I have to, this is why there's a difference between a somebody who simply reads the text and somebody who can do linguistics. Because, just because you have skill in one thing does not mean you have skill in another. So when you're dealing with this word here, it's the word jabit for charcoal is a derived term. It comes from this root here, to be dirty, to pollute. And then abu, you see impurity, taint, right, in its abstract form. Then when you have the j prefix added to it, now it means to blacken. And ja'ab, coal black, in its noun, in its nominal form. Then you have, when you add the suffix t, charcoal. And then, so you can see it has the pellet glyph here that is used for kind of like minerals or rocks, also for color, which you see here as the suffix. But when you see it in this phrase, ja'abit in wahem, charcoal for burning, then it takes on a different determinative or classifier. It takes the burning, the flame here, the burning instrument here. And so you never see the Kim glyph. Any words for burning, for the other words for black, we could say that, this is, that it's putting you in the classifier, the class of things that has to deal with burning. But it doesn't come from a root meaning to burn. It comes from a root meaning to dirty, to pollute. And then with a prefix, it means to blacken. And then with a suffix, it means charcoal. And so the only word in the language for the primary word for charcoal in the language, there's no native word for coal or charcoal. It's a derived term. And so you got to keep this in mind when you are having this conversation. So now when we go into the Wolof words, here's the consonants for the Wolof language. Here's that X that we saw earlier that, in Diop's work, it may be a KH, an aspirated, or not necessarily an aspiration, but a KH and or H. But in modern, dictionaries or linguistic analysis, they usually render it, they use this grapheme to represent that particular sound. So what we have to do is, because you see how easy it is for me in Bantu to do a 2 consonant at a time correspondence list with Kim, and how easily we could see the regular series of correspondences between the 2 languages. You can't really do that in Wolof or Kim. So what you're going to have to do is do each phone one by one. So, we're going to examine the K in the first consonant position between Egyptian and Wolof, and then we're going to do the M in the second consonant position between Egyptian and Wolof. So we can see here, and this is why you got to know where the boundaries are for the morphemes in the Egyptian language, so that you can know what actually corresponds to the root. And so I have the primary phoneme or phone that we're trying to compare here. So we have Km.t, which means whole or hollow, and then we have Khan, whole or moderately large whole in the language. So we have a K to K correspondence here. And so we have, Kini, to complain, to lament, and then we have Kalam, to file a complaint, to complain to. So we say K, K, and so we have N and L here, but we would have to explain what this Ami is in order to argue that this is a true true cognate, in the language. And so we have Kemet, food. And if you've read my work, you know that the K and G sounds interchange or may be dialectical. And so we have a variant of Gim, which is produce or product. And then we know that the M in between two vowels becomes W. So we have gur, a bread. And so this all falls into the same category here. So we have in Egyptian, the K corresponds to the K here, short, fat loaf of bread, hump. And then we have kit kit, to quiver. And then we have koti in Wolof, to shiver with cold. So we have established the sound correspondence between K and K, which satisfy us, which will be no issue there. And then we go to the M sound in the second consonant position. And so we have in Egyptian nam or wanam, food or appetite. And then we have in Wolof nam, food. This is actually switched here, but just to show that M and M correspond between Wolof and Egyptian, men, so and so, someone. And then we have men, so and so, this one being spoken of, right? And so now we have here Kemet, dorsal fin. So Diop didn't even use this word. And then we have king, vertebrae, bone of a dorsal spine, right? And then we have, we're utilizing that Kemet food again, because we're looking at the M sound, and we see here that it corresponds to M. And one of the things that I noticed is that when the Egyptian sound ends in M, and usually there's a T following it, that the M corresponds, the M in that corresponds in Wolof is actually this MP sound. But we can see here when it comes to Kemet dorsal fin that that's not the same. But we notice there's a difference in the vowel length. And usually when there's a vowel lengthening in a language, that there is a consonant that was lost. And so it tries to compensate for the consonant loss by extending the vowel, the stressed vowel here, right? So I would just need some more examples to verify this. But this is just something that I kind of paid attention to even today, reviewing this. And we can see here that we have mena, to nurse, to bring up a child. But we have this form here in the language, Kemet, where the M and N are reversed and meaning nurse. But since we have this suffix T here, it nominalizes the verb. So, but in Wolof, we still have the verb form, to suck, to nurse, of a baby, to spend time with one's mother. So notice the MP, right, on both of these. But you see that they're both suffixed by T in the word. And so we have Kim, destruction, devastation. This is not black devastation. And so we have in Wolof, Ham, damage. Then we have Him, shrine, sanctuary. We have that Ham, shrine, altar. Him, not know, ignorant of. Hamu, not to know, can be pronounced also Hamuma and Harma. I do not know, right? So we can see that because we have at least 4 examples here of just M by itself, and then these variations of MP and M, that these are consistent. And so any problem, and we deal with the Kim in at least 3 of these forms here. So we have established the sound correspondences and done the work necessary to make an argument for the meaning of Kemet. And so what we argue is that the true Wolof cognate to Chikam, Kemet, Egypt, is this word here, Kam, a water reservoir, still water, backwater, area where animals and life in general congregates. Then we have this extended form, Kam, waterway, waterland. What did I just say earlier about the lengthening of the vowel is when the T suffix is lost. So if it's not comb or com, what Wolof does is extend or lengthens the vowel with the loss of T. So this is actually Kemet, a waterway, a waterland. Wakam, Lebu neighborhood area in Dakar, which sits on the canal and the edge of the Atlantic. Those of Kam. Then we have this variation, Kim, to be damp, to be moist. Kam, geological depression, ditch. So all these variations are within the semantic range of what we are calling a Kemet that corresponds to our definition of a land with the presence of vegetation and water, or riparian land. So this is how we do the work. And so the forms that Diop did, cannot be substantiated, but we can substantiate this here. And so we have a similar thing in the Nupe language of Nigeria. So we had this word kun, watering place, kan, farm, kin, farmland. Not farmland, but just land in general, the earth, ground, country. Km.t, high ground. So you can see we have this consonantal skeleton. For here is the KN sound. And then, these very related variations and related terms. It's always a spectrum, but nothing meaning black, right? And this makes sense because, again, as I discussed in our 2019 text, as I discussed in the 2014 text, as I discussed in my 2015 text, as I discussed in the 2020 text, as I'm going to discuss again in the 2022 text, everyone wants to ignore the classifiers, the determinatives for the word Kemet. It's not a coincidence that you have the irrigated land, river, and this is just a variation of the canal glyphs that are joined together in an area. So it's saying a border full of canals. That's what where the water reaches, and that these are synonymous. That's why we have, for example, this word Sapat, district known necropolis, and then we have the same variation with the different determinative, district known. It's the same word. They interchange. And so all of these classifiers have to deal with water. And this is something, again, it's in our 2019 book. And there are other scholars who, independently from me, because I came to this conclusion in a 2014 work, and then I found this later on and included this in the 2019 work. So I had updated mines and showing that you can see that is when we're talking about the newt symbol, it is essentially two mers, which has been encircled here. That's all this is. They're just sapots. That's what this is named for, right? So these are irrigated land classifiers. All of these irrigated land, rivers, canals. That's all this is. And so this is why it's important to actually do the work and not be emotional when it comes to this stuff. And so y'all know my position on these are cognates. In the Sumerian language, in the Chiluba language, this is another variant of the word, a piece of land, a field, a part of a land being plowed in the day, right? And it is also cognate with the word Egypt or Idibwi. This is where I get the word riparian land from. So it's talking about a land. Remember what we said, that a Kemet is a land, that has a watering hole, that has a river running through it, that has an abundance of grass and water, and has to deal with the flood. And so this is a conclusion that even Dr. Oscar Pafuma, in his cultural history of Black Africa text, with the introduction with Theophilo Obenga, right? And he kind of looked like Brother Chavez. So Chavez, if you ever get your DNA taken, see if your peoples come from Cameroon. That's where Dr. Oscar Perfuma is from. So this is an older version of Brother Chavez of the Masi and Kofi Pasai research team. You know, hopefully you ain't smoking cigarettes at that age, but you know, it is what it is, right? So in this text here, you know, he disagrees with Diop also, um, and argues that the word itself, Kim and Kemet, has to deal with farmland, and he verifies this, and he provides these in these various Bantu languages coming out of Cameroon. So this is where for, you know, farm, Kam and Basa, Kam and Doi, Ikam and Isatako, Kam and Godzid and Kumadin and Runda. And then we have these various words: cone, country, region, Ikoma, and Okam and Zim. So even these people, the Okam, the people from the city, the Cone rural area, the Nzim people, in Batateka is Komwa, in Kumi country and Bakweri. In Kumbi is Zulu, is the word for nation. Guma country region in Pende Bantu language. Gumi, so you see all these different variations. And even in the Gala language in Ethiopia, Gomji, land which grows warm and healthily cultivated. So we have all of these variations of the words in Africa dealing with land, farm, you know, and the farmland is just land suitable for farming and the like, you know, all dealing with the presence of water. And so when we see a riparian land, this is exactly what we're talking about here. You know, a land with a river running through it, you know, that floods, and that where they use for agriculture, and they water, and they allow the cattle and things to drink from it, because of course they can't go into the river without drowning. So you know, they rely on this flooding or bringing out the water to feed the animals that you can see in this modern image here. And so, you know, that is essentially the end of the presentation. But I wanted to show that, you know, there's a lot more that goes and that is involved in this discussion, and you have to be able to go into the text and go line by line and show where that there's someone actually do the work. There's no work that was done here. He just made an assumption, and then he believed that his assumption was true, and then just continued to make arguments without going through the process of proving by any kind of methodology whatsoever that in fact Kemet derives from the word Kim, black, you know, without entertaining, without falsifying any all other alternatives, right? And so that's what we're talking about here. And it has nothing, you know, there's nothing malice against Km.t Diop. He's the one that told us to do this. And so I gotta, you know, show this again for those who are in their feelings, you know, about this, right? It bothers me when someone takes me on my word without developing a means of verifying what I say. We must form a scientific spirit capable of seeing even the weaknesses of our own proofs, of seeing the unfinished side of our work, and of committing ourselves to completing it. So, you know, that's why I don't entertain too much on the internet, because you'll just get into these circular arguments, and it'll go on forever because people are lazy and don't want to do the work. And keep in mind that the book that I'm coming out with is part one of a 3-part series. So there's a lot more that I could have went into. But so I'm going to exit and stop the sharing right now. And so, whoa, I come back and 394 comments. So of course I'm not going through all that. Y'all can kiss my black behind going through all those different comments. But I do appreciate all the comments, and I'm betting there's some opposition. It's mainly y'all Negroes arguing with each other in the comments section, because that's just what happens we have these conversations. And so let me go here. And this is our good brother Aziz that I mentioned earlier. And I see the donation made by it looks like Sister Mika. I want to thank you. And I'm not sure if anyone else has made any donations. Earlier I wasn't able to see, but if you did, I do appreciate each and every one of you who did. And who Jawa says, is your background music peer reviewed? Yes, it was peer reviewed. So, and again, I do apologize. I'm in a public space, so you're going to hear a lot of background music and stuff. See, and I had to leave the chat because his comments weren't peer reviewed. We're never going to let him let that go in terms of the peer reviewed everything. Those comments. So 90% of those comments are from the one with the grammatically incorrect name. And thank you, Sister Mika. And I'm trying to scroll. I can't see. I don't know why this is said. Some comments can't be posted. So, I don't know what's going on there. Peer review webcams. It says, how long it take you to learn French? I don't know. and I don't speak it very well, but I can read it at least. And so I need to work on being able to converse quickly, because it takes me a while. Like I can hear it, but I still process it instead of just listening to it and being able to just hear it off the bat. And so that way, if I do that, I can invite more French-speaking authors and researchers to the program, and I can just interpret it on the fly for everyone. That's the goal I'm trying to get to. So hopefully this summer I can be more disciplined and get on it. And so I'm trying to see if there's any questions. Says there should be a lot of questions, RN, with all the controversy going on. I expect there's going to be a lot of questions. And Sister Mika says, great job. Appreciate it. Sister Mika says people should already know by now that when those people get a proper scholastic beat every single time, you can bet they'll scream plagiarism like a child would scream. That happens all the time. Every time we beat up someone's argument, then they try to find little nitpicky stuff and try to make that the issue instead of the fact that they're wrong. They can never admit that they're wrong. Well, let me look for something. Let me look for a period that wasn't added. Let me look for a misspelling here, and we're going to highlight that. And let's see if the work is plagiarized, because I just can't believe that they were intelligent enough to come up with this stuff, on their own. We got to get them somehow. They can never attack the work. They can only try to do ad hominems and try to find some other crap. Let me see here. The claim is Ujawu Sar now are plagiarists according to the app. And the claimant said, he's plagiarism because he self-cites. Well-watered land. Exactly, Richard Sheffield. And keep in mind, I'm just kind of skipping around, so I do apologize. Because, again, it said 300-something comments since I left. So I don't know what all y'all saying. Now jab is the vaccine. Jab is the booster. I don't know what you talking about. You're in another conversation. True. I'm smart enough to know that what level the steps I need to take to get to the next. In the meantime, I don't need to call no feds or a journal on someone above my level. See, yeah, that's on another level of hating that is just beyond me. And again, I'm trying to tell y'all that in this community, there's a lot of individuals who have undiagnosed mental health issues, and this is what causes all the drama in things. So Brother Aziz says, I argue KM charcoal, if at all, is from KM part piece, part branch charcoal. All right. And I know, and to Aziz's credit, remember there was a person I said who is going back and doing the work that Diop started, hopefully with a bit more explanation and precision. And that's our good brother Rowan Fall that you see here. And so he's a native, Wolof speaker, and so he's been working diligently, and he sent me some files today, so I have to look at some of his updated analysis. So this is, I think, is a part of what he's trying to say. I'm not sure what's going on here. So in the Caribbean, we use the term jab jab, which is when we paint our skin black for carnivores. All right. Let's see. I'm just scrolling up. He says, sorry at Walmart, Starbucks, dropping knowledge like that. Look, I was too far away from the crib, so I'm out here in Kingdom of Prussia, and so I just found the nearest Wegmans, and I'm sitting here in the cafe in the corner somewhere, talking loud, disturbing everybody trying to eat. So that's why you can hear the music in the background, and so. Peace to Shun. I have to watch this again to snatch up the sources. Indeed. Let's see. Plume Laye says the word Diop is referencing as him for mural is correct. Remember, the Wolof he's using is ancient Wolof, not modern Wolof. The Wolof word, as people know it, is not the proper spelling. The current word is a word contraction. The correct word is Waolaf. And this is, review the following video and let me know if I can assist further. I can't click the link from inside here. Maybe if I go to after I review, but hit me up in my inbox on Facebook, or send me a message now and send that link again, because what you're saying is exactly what I said earlier. That when I spoke to somebody who knew Diop, who was a student of Diop, he told me that many of the forms that he used in his construction, he got from some elders in the far off, in the what we call the bush, the countryside, who didn't speak the necessary the kind of Wolof that you would find in the urban areas. And so he used some of that, and then he did his own reconstructions. So like some of the words that he's using is claimed to be old, and Dr. Riketi Amen said something similar. And because remember, Dr. Riketi Amen also studied under Wolof and did like a kind of an intern for him for like 1 or 2 years in Senegal. And so that's a little bit of history that many of y'all may not know. And matter of fact, speaking of Dr. Riketi, I just want to play something for everyone. I'm gonna open this up, and I'm gonna share my screen, and we are going to go to my history, and I'm going to go to the recent conversation that we had on the Hoppy channel, because Netanyahu doesn't know much of anything, and he's always in his feelings about something, and then you always get these mischaracterizations, but he likes to throw names out there, and he don't know people's history. and he doesn't know that we know, his history and relationship with certain people. But we not catty like that over here, like some folks who want to make non-scholastic arguments, right? So let me gotta go through that dang YouTube commercials because I haven't paid for a subscription. But I'm gonna play something real quick, and y'all let me know if y'all can hear it. All right, so let me share my screen, and I'm gonna share the Chrome tab. So, as many of you all know, there was a conference in Detroit which I attended, who was put on by the creators of the documentary film Hoppy. And remember that this was supposed to be a conference that was supposed to be in Aswan, Egypt, but due to the Arabized Russian bots hating, they lobbied to get the event canceled, and so they were successful at that, and we moved the conference to Detroit, Michigan, which just happened this weekend, and it was streamed worldwide. And so, recently we just had a kind of a recap, a conversation on the channel. So, on the panel, you see Brother Taki, we have Dr. Motley, Dr. Harris, and myself, and Sister Felicia is over here in the corner. You really can't see her, but I'm going to play a little something, and I want y'all to pay attention closely. So I'm gonna mute my mic, and y'all tell me if y'all can hear the conversation. Let me make that full screen first so that y'all can kind of see, and then y'all let me know in the chat if y'all can hear it when I play it after I mute my mic.
The principles that our ancestors ruled the world for generations. This thing is already on a trajectory towards uplifting and liberating and empowering our people. And so I'm proud to be a part of it. Taki, we have to give our hat off to you. You had the vision flowed through you. You assembled two unbelievably talented Black queens to assist you in this journey. They delivered for you. You assembled a network of the elders and scholars like Brother Asar that's on this panel today. And that's why we are here talking about this foundation that's been laid so that we can what? Do the work. We have to do the work. And this is the crossover.
The crossover. I hear that. Sister Felicia, what's on your mind?
Yeah, you know what? I just keep thinking about something that Sister Tata said. And I'm going to be on her show next week, next Friday.
And others, actually is just the relationship.
Yeah. So this is wonderful. This is great. And
One
guys,
Africa.
yeah. Power and unity. Yes. One Africa. Power and unity.
Yes, that's it. Listen, just the relationship that been fostered with Dr. Jeffries and others, it started with Dr. J about 20 years ago. Actually, it is 20 years ago now. And through him, I met this person, that person, this person, that person, and the relationships were just building, and Felicia and Brittany and Ken and everybody just all came together. Met Saw through Sister Raketi Yaman, Dr. Raketi Yaman, who suggested we reach out to Asar to help us fulfill our vision in the Hoppy film to make the linguistic connection between the Seshmet Necho, the language of our ancestors in ancient Kemet, and Wolof and other African languages. So she said Asar is the person you want to talk to. So hats off to Asar. Brother Asar does an excellent job with that. One of our foremost scholars in that field. I'm just honored to be a part of this experience. And we got to keep this moving forward, take this energy, make sure we harness it in the right way so that we can move on to the next step. There are steps, there are actionable steps.
Okay, maybe I need to unmute my mic. That'll help. But I hope that y'all heard exactly what he said. So, you know, if you leave it to individuals like Reggie and Brother Smash and Shaka and Dugu Kemet, and especially Netter Neb likes to throw around Dr. Raketti Amin's name all the time, you know, and make it seem like, you know, he's this close person to her, and that she validates everything that he says. But you notice, this isn't me talking. Dr. Raketti Amin was interviewed for the documentary film for which I am in. I never met I never met Taki, never knew Taki before the involvement with the film. But when he asked about, you know, is there somebody that can make the connections, linguistic connections between ancient Egypt and Black African languages, and he asked Dr. Raketti, who has a degree in linguistics, that's what she does. But who did she refer him to? She said that Brother Asarimhotep is the one you want to talk to. Got my information from her, and he is the one who hit me up. And so this is why you got to be careful about just listening to people who I've created I'm introducing a new squad, you know, to the conscious community, which I'm calling the Emotional Squad. That is the Emotionals. And I'm including all those folks that just be in their feelings and mad, and just be saying anything out the sides of their behind because they don't know the history. They don't know what we be talking about. We don't know what we be doing. And so, you know, because Ned be in his feelings and be mad all the time, he just like to say stuff. And when all those folks say that he's not a linguist, he don't know what he's talking about, the people don't, the elders don't back him up, and all this other kind of stuff is a lie. They know nothing. They have no relationship with these people. And so you heard from the producer, the creator of the film himself, who she recommended. This isn't me saying, I don't go around bragging about who I know, what I've done, and the like. I don't talk about the text that I have that's peer reviewed, because these Negroes don't read. And this is the stuff this is why at some point you just got to ignore the trolls and just keep continuing to do the work. And I'll stop sharing that and go back into the comments. Let me see. Just saying, bride, kid names, those his name is unknown, I guess. Let's see. Yep. So it was Dr. Raketti Alvin's recommendation to Taki to seek out. No, her recommendation was a peer review, Brother Jao. And you know, it's you know, I'm just kind of reading through the chat, so I'll pause. And exactly, So understand, people, like I've been vetted on this. And when I'm not saying that you just accept my arguments a priori, you know, if I understand that I go out of my way to try to show my work so that you can see how I came to my conclusion. And then if I'm wrong, we can walk through it together. You can say, okay, I see where you got this, but I think the mistake was right here. And because you made the mistake right here, you know, it created a chain of corresponding, you know, errors. And if we just fix that, then this will come together. And I think that's what you do. That's what scholars do. You know, not the he-motionals, you know, who create a singing group and cry together on stage in shiny suits. And so it just kind of is what it is. And so what I'll do is I'll take you know, any kind of questions at this moment. So I'll end this at 7:00, and so we have 9 minutes. And let's see, it says, yo, that quote was the pay man 5-point palm technique. So people's hearts just exploded. Indeed. So then people love Asar. It's only the YouTube scholars who are all ill of his accomplishments. Indeed. It says, Asar, this Abdul, remember when we were talking to Dr. Jeffries, he said, you are next up while we were in the huddle. Exactly. So in peace, and I've been trying to, and I want to say, ain't this the, hold on. Let me go back, because I think your picture is on here. If you don't mind me showing you. So this is, so the brother who's on the screen now, this is who he's talking about, I believe. So this is Brother Abdul. Am I correct, Brother Abdul? Let me know. He said, yep, that is me. Yep. So what he's saying, so this is a person who, you know, got an opportunity to chill with in Detroit and have some deep reflective conversations and learn from. And, you know, hopefully we can get him on the panel one of these days and talk about his journey, his story. He has a unique story that that should be heard. And so what he's saying here, you know, is that Asar, this is our dude. Remember when we were talking to Dr. Jeffries, he said, you are the next up while we were in the huddle. I'm like, so look, this is stuff that I don't talk about because it's not something you brag about. You know, you just do the work because it needs to be done, and then others will speak for you. And so you always got to be careful of those who are always in hateful conversations, trying to make judgments about people, especially ones that they don't know. I've never even met Net or Native anywhere, you know. And so it's, you know, these people, it's you just got to be careful in the streets. There's, as I said before, there's a lot of people who have undiagnosed mental health issues. There are people with certain traumas and other, you know, ethical issues and morals, and just, you know, they come into these spaces and they lie, they're conniving, they're backbiting, and the like, and you can get caught up in all of that drama. And so you know, you try to ignore it as much as possible, but then you got to do stuff like this. So and this is our good brother Panther. He says, I watched Baba Smalls bow to Brother Asar and said a similar sentiment to Asar. And again, these are, you know, I'm not new to these folks. I haven't known them as long as a brother Reggie would have, but you know, especially Professor Smalls, he was there in the beginnings of my evolution, you know. And we're talking with the Ta City African Historical Society in Houston, the organization, you know, connected with and created by Dr. Bean and the like. So people don't know that story. And so I thank you, Brother Panther, for that. So let me see. I'm reading Brother Panther's comment from earlier. Let me see. I'm sure Dr. McKay be trying to avoid Neb the way he be aggressively spamming. I believe it. Michael Easton says, asarimhotep, when I emailed Raketti Ahmed about which book to go to start my learning journey, she told me to get at Rujawu Ma'at's book, and I can enroll in her class, and she uses his book often. See, this is what y'all don't understand. Okay, Brother Rujawu is a former student who completed and mastered the meta nature under her, right? Along with Brother Banachi and others. So has Brother Sanjeti. Dr. Raketti Ahmed in her classes uses Brother Rujawu's books, just as you stated here. And Brother Sanjeti teaches her introduction to meta nature courses. She only deals with the upper level courses in grammar, and I think Brother Banachi does as well. You know, I built her website, well, at least the previous one, the one just right before this, because they got a new site up now, but it's based off of my template, and so they added some things. So, but you know, so it involved me, and then you have on top of that her recommending for Brother Taki to talk to me about linguistic connections between Egyptian and African languages. See, what people don't understand is all three of us, Sanjeti, Brother Rujawu, and myself, are intimately tied with Dr. Raketti Ahmed. That's why every time he mentions her name, we laugh, because they don't know what we know. And I'm not going to be petty and put people's business out in the street like that. But it just shows that he's not there. He's not on that level. And so he has the audacity to make these comments and claims about stuff that he does not know. And this is what we got to be careful of, in this day and age. Let's see. So it's big up. Indeed. And so, yep, the real ones know. And it don't look like there's any. It says, yep, and you never hear them name drop. Man, there's some people that I know. Some of the people that I know, I try to introduce y'all to in terms of interviews, on my channel. But there's others who I know that they would never know that I know and have deep relationships with on the continent of Africa and here. But I don't see any questions. I just see comments. And so I am going to end the show. And I do appreciate each and every one of you for listening and for your commentary and questions. I'll go back, and review the comments in the comment section, not the comment section, in the chat. And if you have any comments, hit me up on my any of my social media outlets, and which is named here, or you can go to my website at asarimhotep.com. If you want to contribute, to the channel, you can do so via CashApp, or you can go to you want to contribute to the film, at least, you can go to channelintofilm.com. We're still fundraising for that. We're almost at our goal of $5,000. And so I appreciate each and every one of you who have donated for that. And so with that said, I am out. I will see y'all next time. Peace.